And that is where we start tonight on this special edition of Power and Politics. Hi there, I'm Fragiskatos in Ottawa this evening. We're talking about the cost of living crisis in this country and what politicians can do about it. And we're putting your questions to them. With us now, Peter Fragiskatos is Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue, and Dan Albas is the Conservatives' finance critic. Hi to both of you. Thanks for being here. The leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, is coming up next. He's listening in to this conversation. Mr. Fragiskatos, I'll start with you, and I'm going to start with a question from a viewer. His name is Joaquin. Have a listen.
Hello, my name is Joaquin Mota from Morden, Manitoba, and my question is, when are you going to reduce the taxes on gasoline and diesel? Thank you.
Mr. Fragiskatos, when will your government do that?
Well, thank you to you, Vashti, for having us on, and for Joaquin for the question. There's a range of measures that democracies around the world are considering. As you saw last week, the Deputy Prime Minister and the Finance Minister announced a suite of measures that will have a direct impact on making life more affordable for Canadians. As far as the gas tax question is concerned, it's not to be ruled out. The question is, will it have an impact? Will it have a meaningful impact, a direct impact in the way that some, including Conservative politicians, say that it will? It's not clear that it would. It's such a volatile environment right now, right? We have, traditionally gas prices are always volatile, but take the current context internationally. You have Ukraine, which is the war continues to unfold there. That's going to continue to have an impact on energy prices. There's other factors that are impacting that as well. And so we're monitoring this, but the suite of measures that were announced last week, which will become available very shortly. Next month, the OAS for seniors age 75 and older is going up.
Yeah,
CCB is indexed to inflation.
I just want to stop you there for a moment, because we do have a number of questions I want to get to, and I want to follow up on your answer there first before I get a viewer to ask their question to Mr. Albas. First of all, when you say announced a suite of measures, you re-announced them. They were already in the budget that came out months before that announcement last week. Second of all, when it comes to the consideration of whether or not some sort of suspension of tax on gas would be effective, I would point out that what's proposed by the Biden administration in the U.S. today, if it goes through, it would make Canada the only remaining country in the G7 not to have cut gas taxes in response to, or some sort of subsidy in response to what's happening with the price of fuel during this current crisis. And third, when you talk about effectiveness, look to Alberta, for example, which has offered a rebate on the provincial tax portion, and they actually just extended it today. They just announced an extension. It has, according to the economist at the University of Calgary, I believe, Trevor Toome, actually reduced the price of gas there. It has been effective. So at what point will you consider it? Like, what's the metric? What's the bar?
Well, again, Bashi, on the measures announced last week, I say announced because the budget was put forward a few months ago, yes, but there's an implementation act that needs to be put forward before measures are enacted. So I don't mean to get into process, but that is an important point to emphasize.
But they're not new. Let's be blunt with our viewers. I don't want to mislead them and them to think that what you're saying is new stuff is coming your way. The stuff that's indexed to inflation was already made clear. And I'm not saying it's not helpful. I'm just saying it was made clear in the budget.
They weren't measures that were being felt and having an impact last week. They will very soon. For example, in July, as I talked about the OAS already, you have the climate action incentive that is going to kick in. You have the Canada Child Benefit that is indexed to inflation. Childcare, the costs for that will come down significantly, 50% by the end of the year. Dental care, we are moving ahead on that for low-income families. So these are meaningful things. On the question of gas, I'm not going to avoid that question. It is something that democracies are looking at. I don't think that in Canada the question has been ruled out. But what I would say is that will it have the impact that many observers are saying that it would have? In the Conservative Party, for example, this is the point they continue to bring up. I just don't see it. We have a very volatile international market that is impacting energy prices. We lead with empathy on this question of affordability. We want to impact people directly and make sure that they have an improved situation. We understand food prices are higher, gas prices are higher. There's a number of things that need to be looked at, but cost of living as a whole needs to be looked at. And that's why the suite of measures announced last week are genuinely meaningful.
Okay, we will continue on that track in a second. But Mr. Albas, I want to put a viewer question to you. This is Khalil's question.
My name is Khalil. I'm from Toronto. And my question is, what immediate concrete actions can you take to reduce the price of food on the shelves? Thank you.
So, Mr. Albas, the propositions your party has put forth so far are mostly geared towards reducing the price at the pump. What would your party propose to address the cost of food?
So we actually had a motion last week that the Liberals and the New Democrats voted down. And in it, it actually said, let's reduce tariffs on things that we need, for example, for various foodstuffs, diapers, et cetera, that Canadians need. That's a way, again, the government of Canada collects those tariffs. It doesn't go to other countries, and especially on fertilizer. So the government has been signaling new changes on tariffs when it comes to fertilizer, as well as restrictions on what they can use. So if farmers can't grow food with fertilizers, they can't grow food at all or very well. Let's also remind ourselves that gasoline is a key driver of inflation, whether it be at the grocery store or whatnot. You need to have the transportation costs. And again, to actually put food on people's tables, you need farmers that have industrial grade equipment to do that. So I disagree with the parliamentary secretary. One of the fastest ways we can do to lower inflation, and you said it yourself, Vashi, we have 2 months of data of when the Alberta government lowered gas taxes. It actually lowered inflation compared to the rest of Canada. So Alberta is not only protecting their consumers, but they're actually protecting their economy and cooling down inflation. Now, what President Biden has suggested is that not only have they opened up their strategic reserves, but they're also saying that we are proposing a 3-month holiday on gas taxes, and he's suggesting that states do otherwise. Look, if every province took action, even a little bit, along with the federal government, we would actually see costs at the grocery store, costs at the pumps go down, as, again, gas is one of the key inflators of inflation. So we want the government to start focusing on measures that will help people today. They keep promising more new spending and not realizing their key role in inflation. Look, Chrystia Freeland made a choice, and she was criticized by the parliamentary budget officer for putting $100 billion of new stimulus spending that had nothing to do with COVID. That was a choice. She's been injecting more money into the economy, and that has been raising the prices that Canadians are seeing. That is how
ultimately, though, ultimately, is it fiscally responsible of your party to, for example, propose this holiday on taxes, which ultimately would decrease the revenues used by the government that goes towards this spending, right? You end up with a bigger deficit through what you are proposing. How is that fiscally responsible?
Well, so it's not spending, it's actually letting people keep their money. And again,
but it's forfeiting revenue to the government.
In a usual year, Vashi, they collect about $5 billion off of GST at the pump between diesel and between gasoline. Last year, they brought in $14 billion. So look, they are bringing in this windfall profits, and they're putting it towards all sorts of spending that is actually driving up inflation. What we saw, Vashi, is that when people in Alberta reduced the gas price, that was immediately passed on to consumers.
But that didn't happen in Germany. It did happen in Alberta.
Well,
it didn't happen in Germany.
But in Germany, they're also in a much different situation. They don't have a strategic oil reserve. They're completely dependent on oil and gas, but they still have put $16 billion into a gas plan so that they can both lower inflation and protect their consumers, Vashi. So I'm not saying this is costless. That's why we haven't said make it a permanent tax cut. We've said make it a temporary one. We actually haven't put a timeline to it because we want to be able to adjust with international events. But you know what, Vashi? This is the problem. In the United States, they have strategic oil reserves. Well, we have reserves too, but this government has actually made it so that the private sector doesn't want to produce more oil and gas because they don't see a future.
There's 300,000 extra barrels of oil being produced a day right now. But I take I know what you're saying. I just know that it'll open up a whole other debate, and unfortunately, I don't have enough time for one.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. But again, conservatives want to see action today, and this is a responsible way to do it.
I have to leave it there. Peter Fragiskatos and Dan Albas, thank you very much, both of you. Appreciate your time tonight. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.